Hi there. Welcome to ParentingU, a podcast to help you navigate this amazing journey we call parenting. Today, we welcome nurse practitioner Josh LeJeune, pediatric primary care provider with Our Lady of Lourdes Children's Health. I'm your host, Stephanie, and we're glad you're listening to ParentingU. Well, welcome, Josh.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be able to talk about ADHD today with you and how we can manage some of these summertime symptoms.
Yeah, so you have probably prepped for this episode the most out of any of our guests. So I'm so excited to ask some questions, but also talk through this topic that I think is very near and dear to your heart. So thank you for your time today. Why don't you start telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your practice, anything you'd like to share about you, your family, and your life?
So I'm a family nurse practitioner. I work in pediatric primary care. And I'm also certified as a pediatric primary care mental health specialist, or PMHS as they abbreviate it. It's a lot of words, but basically it means that I've had specialized training to help identify, manage, and support the mental health and behavioral conditions in young children and teens. So we're talking things like autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, behavioral challenges. What's unique about my role is that I do this work like right here in our primary care setting. So this is where families are normally bringing their kids in for checkups and routine care. And it makes it easier for us to spot and address concerns early on and to be able to support them in a setting that feels familiar. And then I also work very close with mental health professionals outside of the primary care setting to make sure that both their mental and physical health is like well-rounded, and we can do a lot of care coordination to address all of those needs.
Well, and the listeners can't see, but you're wearing a fabulous Mickey Mouse shirt.
Thanks.
And you have some fabulous Disney art behind you. It seems like you're a Disney fan.
I am a big Disney fan. Sad they can't see it, but the paintings behind me, I actually painted.
They're incredible. Maybe you could take a picture for us and we could put it in the show notes of the episode.
Sure, we can definitely do that.
Well, ADHD has been a hot topic on our podcast. People have wanted more episodes about it. So why don't you start a little bit with helping us understand what it is and how it may show up differently in boys and or girls? You want to start there?
Sure. So whenever I have a new patient that comes in and they're getting diagnosed with ADHD for the first time, it's a lot of information to take in. And a lot of people kind of have their external views of what's going on. But one of the important things is I like to explain to my parents what internally their child is struggling with so that it helps them to better understand why some of the behaviors occur. And then it helps us to better manage those behaviors. I guess to start off, ADHD is not a behavior problem. It's not about laziness. It has nothing to do with discipline, how you parent your child, or their intelligence level. It's a difference in how their brain is wired, specifically in the areas that affect executive functioning. And that's the skills we rely on every day. So things like focus, organization, impulse control, their emotional regulation, and planning ahead. In kids with ADHD, these parts of their brain are still developing, but then they also, in a neurotypical kid at this age, also operate differently than we do as adults. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes in from parents, is because they don't understand how their kid should be functioning at that age, and they're comparing them to themselves as fully functioning adults. So there's a couple parts of the brain, or a couple systems in the brain I'd like to specifically point out that just kind of helps us to understand why certain ADHD actions occur. The first one's going to be what we call the internal brake system. So in kids with ADHD, this part of their brain works slower. This is the part that helps us to pause before we act or speak. So like when a kid blurts something out, interrupts, or they act impulsively, it's not that they want to be disruptive. It's because the signal to stop didn't arrive fast enough. So the action happened before the brain could actually process it. So we'll see this when you've seen a child and you thought like, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? And it's because they didn't really have the thought yet. The action came first. One of the other issues we'll see with ADHD is trouble with their attention filter. So in a neurotypical brain, we can filter out distractions automatically. But in a child with ADHD, everything comes in at one time. So like the buzz of lights, the movement outside the window, tags in their shirt, all of this is being absorbed and not filtered out like it is with a neurotypical brain. So staying focused on one thing, especially something that's very low stimulation, like brushing your teeth, doing a worksheet at school, it's really, really hard for these kids. Their brain's also wired a little bit different, and it seeks stimulation and new things like novelty. So that's why routine tasks can be really painful and boring for them, even when a child knows how to do them. But on the flip side of that, something that's exciting or new, like some kind of challenge, a video game, some kind of project, they can hyper-focus on for hours. And parents will often ask, like, why can't they focus on homework for 5 minutes, but they can play in Minecraft and build a castle for 2 hours? And that's their brain finding a dopamine fix wherever it can. So that has to do with that wiring difference. And then lastly, one of the big things to emphasize with ADHD is that their emotions are dialed up. ADHD brains process emotions quickly and very intensely. A small frustration, like for instance, you poured the cereal in the wrong bowl, can feel like a crisis in the moment for those kids because their brain doesn't give them time to like pause, reflect, or reset. And then ADHD, the other part you were asking about was our difference between boys and girls. So ADHD in boys and girls is very different as far as their presentation, and that affects when we diagnose these patients because of their presentations. ADHD in girls typically goes undiagnosed for longer because girls typically have a more quiet presentation. They'll have more of the inattentive type of ADHD, so they'll present as daydreamers, they'll be disorganized, have emotional sensitivity. They're quieter signs of ADHD. These people often like space out. People say that they're lazy, but really it's their attempt at masking their symptoms, and they overcompensate by people pleasing, which leads to their exhaustion, anxiety, and then we end up with low self-esteem, especially in our adolescent girls. Whereas boys typically have all the external symptoms. So that's going to be our typical hyperactiveness or impulsiveness. They're constantly on the go. These are really easy to just like look at somebody and suspect ADHD, whereas with girls, it's a little more to unpack. But the most important thing is having ADHD doesn't mean that your kid's not capable. Usually these are some of the most imaginative, like passionate, capable kids that you'll ever meet. They just need support that aligns with how their brain works, not the constant pressure to fit their brain into like a mold or society that's working against them.
We could do 7 episodes on what you just said. Like it's just so incredible the learnings we can have about what this is and kind of the misunderstandings or the misperceptions. I love what you said about it's not a behavior diagnosis.
No, it's not a behavior diagnosis. And a lot of times people think it is.
Right. It's not about discipline. It's just how the brain is working differently. Why do you think it is that way? Why do you think people feel it's a behavior issue?
Because they only see the external symptoms of ADHD, so like the physical manifestations. They don't understand or feel the struggle that's leading up to the physical presentation. So they only see the end result, not the 3 steps it took to get to that end result, which is the physical part that they're seeing.
That's very true. And I think what you said about, I have 2 daughters, and so what you said about the girls hiding or masking to people please really hits home. And that's so interesting that, and then you see it on the flip side of boys, if they're a little bit more active, maybe they're labeled as the bad kid, whereas the girl may be labeled as the quiet one. And it's just labels that are just so terrible.
Yeah. A lot of times that first diagnosis, they come in with labels that they've gotten from school. They're labeled as like the bad kid or with the behavioral problem. They're constantly coming home with like the conduct marks, especially with the boys. Whereas the girls will, not so much from a school setting unless they withdraw because their anxiety is so bad, will come from more of like a home setting where the parents notice that they withdraw and they're not interacting with peers like other children their age.
Well, our season of ParentingU is all about summer. And so even though we could do 7 episodes on what you just said, I want to talk about summer and ADHD specifically. It's a big shift from the structure of the school year. Why can that be especially tough for kids with ADHD?
So during the school year, kids benefit from the structure of the school day. Everything's very routine. They have like expected class lengths. They have transitions, lunch breaks, homework time. All of it's very predictable, which is what ADHD brains thrive on. It's not what the person with ADHD thinks they need, but it is actually what benefits them and helps their symptoms to stay the most under control. So even if school itself is tough, they typically are more regulated during the school year. than they are at home when we start taking some of those things away. So as we get into summer, typically the structure of the day often disappears. There's no set like wake up time, bedtimes get later, activities will change day from day. So kids that and people that have ADHD already struggle with time management and planning, emotional regulation. So all of those things combined can lead to like our boredom, restlessness, impulsivity, overstimulation, and then emotional dysregulation that comes from the unpredictable schedule of the day. And then this will present itself as kids bouncing from activities without finishing any of them. They might rely on screen time to kind of help ground them because it's regulating and they don't really know what else to do. It's tough on parents too. Without the normal school routine, they often experience more meltdowns, more resistance around their transitions, more sleep disruptions, and more struggles at home. And this can show up like meltdowns or emotional outbursts, difficulty transitioning from like one activity like morning playtime to lunch, for example, trouble sleeping because sleep time at night's not enforced around that same consistent like 7-8 o'clock that we normally see in younger kids. And then a lot more screen time typically happens around the summer. But the big takeaway is for summertime, we need to make sure that kids have like a rhythm and predictability so that the structure of it can help them to feel calm, safe, and regulated.
Grown-ups need doctors too, and kids need their parents to be healthy. Building a relationship with a primary care provider is one of the best things you can do for your own health and for your family. Our health system makes it easy to find care that fits your life with extended hours, video visits, walk-in clinics, and same-day appointments. Whether it's time for a checkup, a screening, or care when you're feeling under the weather, our team is here to help you stay well. Visit doctors.fmolhs.org to connect with a provider near you.
I like the idea of what you're saying about a light structure. So let's talk about that, creating a summer routine that can work for kids that really do thrive with some sort of regulation, right? So what are some things parents can do to help with the summer shift?
Yeah, so our goal with this structure is it's not to recreate like the full school day. It's just to offer enough structure so that the day becomes predictable without losing like the fun of summertime and the flexibility that makes summer fun. But there's things we can do that'll add like key moments in the day to where it makes their schedule more predictable. Some things we can do is like a visual schedule. So like have a whiteboard or a calendar in the kitchen. You can use like sticky notes or a planner app or different colors on the whiteboard so that the kids know what's coming up when they can expect something next. It helps give them ownership to their day because they kind of know instead of being told at the last minute that they're going to do something, they can kind of mentally prepare for it. And then we can build in what we call anchor activities. So these are points in the day that happen consistently. So like for summertime, it might be a morning walk, doing lunch every day at 12. From 1 to 2 is no phone quiet time, evening reading. All of this helps to keep them like in the same rhythm. So that they don't have this emotional like dysregulation. And then we want to support transitions. This is one of, especially for younger kids, one of the more triggering activities because they feel like their autonomy is taken away when all of a sudden you're like, we have to stop playing and go to the store. So to help with this, we want to help them to shift those gears a little easier. So we can do things like countdowns. So give them like a 5-minute warning or use a timer. Just to help them transition a little better between tasks so that it's not so much of a shock. And then we want to make sure we're giving them free time. It is summer. Like I said at the beginning, we don't want that rigid schedule. Let them explore things that interest them, play, or even get bored. Because sometimes boredom isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it can lead to creatively thinking and coming up with activities to keep themselves occupied. So the big takeaway is we want to make sure that we're not keeping anything too rigid. We just want to give enough shape to their day so that it stays predictable. And then this helps with the transitions and helps to reduce that emotional overload.
I really like what you're saying about visual. So you said visual calendar, visual timers. I'm noticing as I'm looking around my house, there are no clocks anymore, right? Because it's all on our phone. So my kids never know what time it is. They're always asking, "What time? Why do we have to go?" And then you're like, "We have to go." And so a visual calendar, a visual timer clock really helps keep kids on track. I love that.
Yeah, it just helps to reinforce, especially because a lot of people with ADHD have time blindness. Like they're in a constant state where they never really know what time it is. Things that could take a very short amount of time because of how they have to process it could seem like a 5-minute task is taking an hour for them, and they think they've lost way more time than they actually did, or vice versa. They could hyper-focus on an activity, spend 2 hours doing it, and in their head, 10 minutes have gone by. So being able to have those like visual check-ins does help them a lot to stay on task and to transition from one task to another.
Well, you mentioned screen time. Do you have any recommendations for parents and families? Because screen time is big and a go-to for a lot of families. I mean, mine included during the summer, especially because a lot of times I may be working at home with the kids. But any advice on how to handle screen time so that it doesn't become a battle?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very easy to fall into what I call the screen time trap over the summer. They're very convenient. They capture the kids' attention, and parents just sometimes need a break. So it's a very easy way to get a break, keep the kid calm, safe, and quiet for a little while so you can work on something. But for kids with ADHD, too much screen time can absolutely backfire. It can lead to worsening sleep, mood swings, loss of interest, and other types of play because they get quick dopamine surges from videos, especially with the current technology age where we have like little short, like 15 to 90 second videos. Each one is a whole new dopamine surge as they flip from topic to topic. So it's very easy for them to become, kind of think of it like those old games where the ball would like ping around the board and you get like the lights and sound each time it hits off. Each time they flip a video, it's like one of those bouncing around.
You're just getting pinged all the time.
So ways we can help keep things in balance, we can set clear expectations, let them know how long they have, and it's like a predetermined time that either you give them or they can earn each day.
Yes.
And we want to make it like after they do their chores or after outdoors time for that day, not to start the day off, but like as a reward for accomplishing something that day. Again, we want to go back to the timers or alarms so that they are aware of how much time they have and they can visually track it. And then if we're going to do screen time, it's best to prioritize interactive screen time. So these are things like coding games, music making apps, digital art programs, like stuff that'll actually engage the brain instead of just give it little dopamine bursts. So that way they're actually accomplishing something, not just mindlessly scrolling. And then something else we can do to help regulate it is either create screen-free times of the day. So where from wake up until after lunch, like you're not allowed to touch the screen. It's only like a late afternoon activity. Or screen-free zones in the house. So you're allowed to watch or use screen time like only in the living room, nowhere else in the home. And that'll help to cut down on the amount of screen time that they're using. Then we always want to offer like alternatives to screen time. So like physical activity, really anything you do outside, like backyard games, swimming, walking, biking, creative play. So like building with Legos, storytelling, arts, crafts, even like at our local libraries, we have like summertime programs, and they'll do things like STEM activities. We have scavenger hunts over the summer, or Play Acadiana here in Lafayette over the summer, where they can get out and actually like play and interact with other kids. Parents can also do things like play dates or summer camps with other kids just to get them away from that screen and socially interacting.
So you mentioned screen time and either having a set time or they can earn it with chores or whatever. How would you best recommend approaching that with kids with ADHD? Are they going to respond better to earning time, or are they going to respond better to here is your set time and then they can use it however they would like during the day?
That's honestly going to depend on the emotional maturity of the specific child.
Okay.
Some younger kids will need that quick gratification where they do a chore and they get 15 minutes of screen time. And we can do that throughout the day to motivate them to do like certain tasks to get things accomplished. Whereas older kids, like our adolescents, have an understanding of what needs to be done. And then as a reward, they can have like a solid like hour of screen time or something later in the day. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be more dependent on like the maturity of the kid as far as, I guess, how they want it. And some kids may want longer periods at a time and not have their game like broken up into 15-minute segments throughout the day.
That's good. That's good advice. You mentioned play dates and camps and community events. And summer can be isolating sometimes for kids. Either they're away from their normal group of friends at school and they're meeting different friends at camps, or they're home and not around anybody at all. What's your advice for helping kids with ADHD stay connected and working on those social skills during the summer?
So we want to definitely make sure that we don't end up isolated, because that actually can make ADHD symptoms worse. But there are a lot of good camps out there. There's even some that are designed for kids with ADHD. A lot of communities will have like organizations or parent groups, like specifically on ADHD or other neurodivergent type kids. And they'll organize events over the summer, whether it's like a weekend barbecue or play dates like every morning at some set location. Some of them will even have like organized activities. So that's a great way to kind of get them out of the house, meeting other kids and doing things. But there's lots of community resources, like libraries will have like STEM programs, art classes. There's a lot of summertime sports. There's science activities. If you have younger kids, just having play dates with other kids their age, where they just go out to the park, or even doing like family time where you're having game nights, like collaborative play type projects or like STEM kits. Or if you have older kids, they may be interested in volunteering at some activity. But regardless of how we do socially to get them out there, one of the big things with ADHD is we also need to teach them how to act socially. So we need to do social coaching with the kids. And this is going to be like role playing certain activities with them. Because of that impulsiveness, sometimes they don't know how to just like join in with kids that are already playing, how to join into a game, how to manage frustration when they get overwhelmed, how to read other people's social cues. So these are things that may come naturally to some people, but a lot of kids with ADHD actually need to be taught this. So summertime's a great time to work on building those types of skills so they're more confident when they're going into those situations.
It's kind of like practice, like adult practice or social practice. You can role play and practice at home. Because I think we forget they don't come to us with all of these things already built in. The kids, like we assume, oh, you should know how to go up and say, hi, I'm Stephanie. Can I play? We have to show them and teach them.
Some neurotypical kids will naturally do that on their own, and they'll pick it up just from social cues from other kids. But because of all of the amount of input that's taken in during any social situation with a neurodivergent kid, typically it's something that has to be pointed out. Because they'll just otherwise walk up if somebody's having a conversation, they don't wait their turn, and they're just like instantly like blurting out, introducing themselves or talking off the bat.
A common question that I think you probably get, or a lot of patients ask about or are curious about, is medication. And so some ADHD kids have no medication, some have different modifications, whatever it may be. But talk a little bit about medication over the summer, and should parents handle ADHD medication differently?
So that's a great one. That's a big question I get, especially as we start getting closer to the summer months from the parents, is should we take a break from ADHD meds during the summer? And the short answer is it depends.
It's our favorite answer.
It's not a one size fits all. Yeah. So when it comes up, there's several things we kind of need to take into account for when we decide if meds are appropriate over the summer or not. Because some kids it is, and some kids it's fine to take a break. So when it comes up, I like to sit down and we'll have an open like pros and cons conversation that involves the child. I like them to take ownership. They understand what their diagnosis is, and I like them to have a say in it. So we always take what their feelings are into consideration. Some kids love being on their meds, don't want to stop taking them. They feel normal, they have no side effects in their mind, like they're fully functioning on them. And as long as we're not having any growth issues, then we'll encourage them to keep taking them around the summer. There's no cons in that situation. But other kids sometimes, especially when we're taking stimulant type meds, may have like appetite changes on the med, and then we need to use summer as like a catch-up time to where they can eat more, get more calories in during the day, so that they can kind of hit those growth spurts that they may not be hitting during the school year due to one of their med side effects. Sometimes we'll do it to let them kind of reset on the medication. So as kids get older, sometimes we have to increase doses because they'll form a tolerance to certain med or to a certain dose. And sometimes by taking a prolonged like summertime break, we can start the next school year back at a lower dose for certain medications. Cons are some of these kids will have a lot more emotional dysregulation off of their medication. So if that's one of the things that the medication is treating, we probably don't want to stop the meds on that kid. Or if they're having a lot of behavioral problems. So typically our hyperactive kids, a lot of times parents opt to keep them on meds over the summer, whereas our inattentive kids have a lot more freedom to come off of those meds because there's no behavioral component attached. Coming off can also give us like a heightened impulsivity. They may have more difficulty with like social interactions, especially with that summertime routine that we talked about earlier. But before we make any changes, I always recommend that you discuss it with your child's provider, because there are so many types of meds on the market now. Some of them can't just be stopped abruptly. Some we have to have plans in place on how we're going to taper it down for summertime. And then some, if we stop that long, it's a 4 to 6 week reloading period when school starts. So by the time you get them off and then reload them, we've basically had no time of them being off over the summer. So there wasn't really a point in doing it.
I think that's great and gives merit to your answer of it depends.
Yeah.
Because I think every situation is different.
Yeah, so like if your kid is like struggling like with the big emotions like peer conflict, staying regulated during unstructured times, they'll probably benefit from their meds over the summer months. But if your kid's not having issues with that and it's truly just a focus problem, they may be completely fine taking them off. And one of the things to consider is a lot of kids are sometimes on more than one medication. They may be like on a stimulant and a non-stimulant, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. Sometimes it's we can stop the stimulant, but we stay on the emotional regulation med. So it's unique to every kid. So I definitely recommend it be a conversation with your provider to see what works best for you and your family for the summertime.
Well, let's talk about my favorite topic, which is sleep. I love sleep, but sleep schedules do get thrown off in the summer. They can get messy. How can parents help kids with ADHD get enough rest without going back to what you said earlier about it being just like the school year and being a really rigid schedule? How can we make sure we're getting enough sleep?
Yeah, so ADHD and sleep challenges often go hand in hand. Kids with ADHD have difficulty falling asleep due to a delayed melatonin production. They typically have racing thoughts. They are, in general, restless. And when the bedtimes kind of shift later, the routines fall apart with the addition of screen time. Sometimes it becomes very hard to manage their sleep schedule. So there's a couple things that we can do to help with that and help them keep like a regular sleep routine throughout the summertime. One of the big ones is to try to keep their sleep and wake times consistent. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same times that you're using during the school year, because they don't necessarily have to wake up as early in the morning during the summer, but we want like a consistent 9 p.m. bedtime and maybe 7, 8 a.m. wake up time. And we want to try to keep that as consistent as possible, because that will give them a routine. It'll give them something where they know like consistently we're getting close to bedtime and it's time to start winding down. Which brings me to the next thing. We want to do a calming bedtime routine, so we can 30 minutes before start dimming the lights in the house, turn off the TVs, because we don't want that blue light right before bedtime. That tends to, even neurotypical people, will keep them awake longer. We can start with soft music, a warm bath, quiet reading, or family story time. Just the same consistent so that they know bedtime is starting to approach. We want to make sure that for about 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime, we're limiting that screen time. If for some reason they're unavoidable, you want to use something like a blue light filter or like the night shift mode that are on a lot of phones now to cut out that blue light, because that signals the brain to reawaken. So we don't want that to happen as we're trying to wind down. And then we can also do sensory tools, white noise, bedtime yoga, stretching to help calm the body down, and then weighted blankets.
And is there anything with sleep? Like, what about naps? Like, are naps good, bad, ugly, indifferent? Because a lot of times my kids, when they come home from camp, they're exhausted. Maybe they take like a 30-minute nap or an hour nap. Is that good, bad?
So naps are going to depend on the specific kid and their age. Younger kids do still need naps. Sometimes adolescents need naps when they heavily exert themselves. The thing we want to be cautious with is if nap time starts to affect sleep time. So if taking a nap now means that we're going to be up an extra 2 hours tonight, we want to try not to continue to reinforce that nap, because then we're going to just reinforce a later bedtime. So you have to be careful that you don't fall into the nap time affecting sleep time like cycle.
Yeah.
But if your kid had a particularly like high exertion day and you played hard at the park and they're just exhausted after lunch, it's fine to give them a 30-minute to an hour nap, and that probably won't affect their sleep for that night.
What about the parents? How can we take care of ourselves as we take care of our kids during the summer and all the changes that may come with it?
Yeah, so parenting a child with ADHD during the summer isn't just a scheduling challenge. It's an emotional marathon. The structure of the school disappears, like we talked about. The routines change. A lot of those support systems that you're relying on throughout the year, like teachers, therapists, counselors, they're not available. And a lot of that responsibility then shifts to you as the parent. It's easy to fall into the pattern of putting all your energy into your kids' needs and forgetting about your own. But the truth is, and it's that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. When you're emotionally depleted, it becomes harder to respond with patience, and it's harder to respond to the flexibility of your child's needs. So your well-being matters just as much as theirs does. So some ways that as a parent you can care for yourself is build in regular rest moments. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Even 10 minutes, like after the kids wind down at night, of quiet you time where you listen to music, or if you're a morning person before the kids up, have your coffee, step away from the noise. It can help calm you and help your system to recharge. They're not really indulgent breaks, so I don't like parents to think of them. They're actually, I like to tell my parents they're essential breaks.
I love that.
Like you really need it for your emotional well-being. And then you want to identify your own anchors. So just like your child benefits from a predictable routine, so do you. So whether it's a morning walk, journaling before bed, checking in with a friend, seeing grandparents, you want to find like those touch points throughout your day that can help ground you. Another thing you can do is connect with others who understand ADHD. So ADHD parenting can feel isolating, especially when it seems like other families have it together, because I guarantee you they don't. Surround yourself with people who get it, whether it's a local support group, online community, or a trusted friend who just listens. Make sure we ask for help before we hit that breaking point. Whether it's sharing your responsibilities with a partner, calling a grandparent for the afternoon, asking a friend to take your child on a play date, accepting help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a strategy to sustain parenting.
Right. I really like what you're saying about it's not the strategy to sustain. Because you mentioned it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And even not in the summer, even just overall parenting, the idea that we have to take breaks or take care of ourselves is not a bad thing. It's a sustainability measure.
One of the things I like to tell my parents is it's okay to let go of your Pinterest version of the summer. Your home doesn't need to look perfect. Your family and friends don't care. Your child doesn't need to be constantly entertained. Some days it's going to feel out of control, loud, messy, unproductive, and that's okay. What matters is the connection that you're building, not the schedule that you're keeping.
Straight to the heart, man. That's so good. Say that again. What matters is the connection you're building, not the schedule you're keeping.
Correct. Like your children aren't going to necessarily remember what time and when and where you got stuff done. They're going to remember the interactions that you had with them.
Yes. And the consistency in the presence, the calm presence, even if you're kind of having fun, calm presence will make a difference.
Absolutely. And then we always want to recognize your wins, even the small or seemingly invisible ones. So maybe your child got through a meltdown faster than they normally did, or you stayed calm during one of those hard moments that we know inevitably is going to happen. Just remember you got out of bed, you showed up for them again that day, and that's what matters. You don't want to wait for somebody else to notice. Just make sure you're celebrating yourself.
Pat on the back. Gold star. Well, it's summer, so we're asking all of our guests, what is your favorite part of summer?
So my favorite part is actually hanging out at the park with my nephew, playing on the jungle gym, flying kites, just outside time. We're a very outdoorsy family. So the more time we can get out and active and play, the better off we are.
I love that. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share for parents of kids with ADHD? Like I said, we could do 7 episodes, but if there's a parting word of wisdom for our parents, what would that be?
Yeah, so probably the big takeaway is going to be that ADHD doesn't take the summer off, and neither do the supports that help the kids thrive. With just a little structure, some intentional planning, a lot of compassion, families can create a summer that works with the ADHD brain and not against it.
With it, not against it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Josh. This has been an illuminating conversation, and I know our listeners will take away as much as I did from it. So everything you mentioned, we will link in the show notes. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of ParentingU as we continue to navigate this amazing journey we call parenting together. See you soon.